Sniffing is the process of collecting information as it crosses the network. It's similar to eavesdropping or wiretapping, and it can be active or passive. If you're just monitoring traffic as it passes by, that's passive sniffing. If you alter the traffic in any way, that's active sniffing. To make sniffing effective, you'll want to put your network interface into promiscuous mode. Normally, an interface is set to grab frames that are directed to its MAC address. Turning on promiscuous mode gives the interface permission to grab every frame that comes its way, even if it's addressed to someone else. As you can imagine, you'll gather a lot of information during this process, and you'll need to examine each packet closely to see what information might be useful. It's kind of like detective work. Detectives review stacks of evidence and hours of surveillance tape in an attempt to find 1 or 2 bits of information that will help prove their case. Thankfully, there are tools that help make your job much easier, but it's still important to know what to keep an eye out for. First, you'll want to focus on packets that are being sent with less secure protocols. Luckily for you, the hacker, some protocols weren't designed to be extremely secure. SMTP, for example, was designed to deliver an email message with the hope that security measures were handled at another layer. POP3 was designed to retrieve emails, so associated passwords and usernames are easy to intercept. FTP was designed to transmit files, all of which are sent in clear text form. Other vulnerable protocols include IMAP, HTTP, and Telnet. Passwords and data are sent over clear text, once again counting on a different layer to handle encryption. When you're examining packets, you'll want to keep an eye out for source and destination IP addresses. The IP addresses will, most likely, be listed in hexadecimal format, so you'll want to refresh your hex to standard conversion scales if you haven't done that in a while. What about switch networks? As you can imagine, networks that include switches can provide an initial challenge. You won't be able to sniff an entire network. We're going to talk about 4 methods that can help you sniff out portions of the network. These are MAC spoofing, MAC flooding, ARP poisoning, and port mirroring. First, let's talk about MAC spoofing. Port security is a common low-level security measure. It allows only specific MAC addresses to access a switch. The goal is to ensure the only authorized devices have access to the network. A MAC address for a network interface card, or NIC, is assigned by the manufacturer. This address is hard-coded directly into the NIC and can't be changed. But it's possible to change the interface driver's MAC address. Let's say you want to access a network, but the administrator has implemented port security measures. Thanks to your previous reconnaissance and scanning, you know that John Smith's computer has access to the network, and you even know his MAC address. You can choose from several software tools that let you spoof your computer's MAC address to look like John's MAC address. And before he logs on for the day, you can connect directly to the network with minimal effort. You've basically created false identification and walked right into the party using someone else's invitation. Next, we'll talk about MAC flooding. When a switch is initially turned on, it doesn't know which device it's going to support. A switch tracks MAC addresses in a Content Addressable Memory Table, or CAM table for short. As it receives packets from various MAC addresses, it adds the addresses to its CAM table and associates each one with a physical port on the switch. This process allows data to be sent directly to the port where the intended recipient is located, instead of sending all data across the entire network, like a hub does. Although one port can have multiple MAC addresses associated with it, the CAM table is only so big. As a hacker, you can use a method called MAC flooding to intentionally flood the CAM table with Ethernet frames that each originate from a different MAC address. When the table starts to overflow, the switch responds by broadcasting all incoming data to all ports, basically turning itself into a hub instead of a switch. Since your MAC address is connected to one of the ports, you're able to capture all traffic as it's broadcast across the network. After you've successfully launched a MAC flooding attack, you may want to follow up with ARP poisoning, also known as ARP spoofing. You might recall that the Address Resolution Protocol, or ARP, maps IP addresses to MAC addresses and provides the most efficient path for data transmission. ARP broadcasts are permitted to freely roam around the network. You can use this free flow of traffic to your advantage. By sending spoof messages onto a network, you can associate your MAC address with another host's IP address, preferably the default gateway. As a result, the target machine will think that you're the gateway and send frames to your system before you forward them onto the intended destination. Let's say that your target machine has an IP address of .2 with the MAC address of B. You know that the target machine's default gateway has an IP address of .1 with the MAC address of A. Currently, all incoming and outgoing traffic is routed through the gateway computer. Although you've jumped onto the network with an IP address of .3 and a MAC address of C, you can send spoofed information to the victim stating that your IP address is .1 with a MAC address of C. You'll also send spoofed information to the switch saying that you are .2 with a MAC address of C. Now, all traffic headed to and from your target machine will be routed through your system. Since ARP caches are flushed every 2 to 5 minutes, you'll want to continue to poison the cache every 30 seconds to a minute. If it's effective, users can't detect ARP poisoning, and it should allow you to maintain access to sensitive data even after the switch recovers from the MAC flooding attack. Our fourth method, port mirroring, can be a little more challenging to set up, but it's possible depending on the level of access you've been able to obtain to a network. The concept behind port mirroring, also known as span port, is actually pretty simple. Port mirroring creates a duplicate of all network traffic on a port and sends it to another device. If all traffic from a target machine is directed to the server through a switch, you can implement port mirroring. Port mirroring ensures that any time the data comes through, it's duplicated and sent out to the attacker's machine as well. Well, that's it for this lesson. In this lesson, we talked about active and passive sniffing, and we discussed 4 methods for sniffing on switch networks: MAC spoofing, MAC flooding, ARP poisoning, and port mirroring.